Good morning. Glad you joined us with Coffee with Doc this morning. It's Thursday, August the 5th. Can you believe that we are nearly through the summer? A lot of kids are going back to school this week, and August is dawned here in the southeast part of Tennessee with a very crisp morning. It's been in the 60s the last 2 weeks. And so I know it probably has where you've been too, but we've really enjoyed that being out in it. But glad you joined us here this Thursday morning, August the 5th, for our look at Joshua. And what we've been looking at is facing up or face to face with our Jerichos. What is your Jericho? For Joshua, it was a city that was impenetrable, a city that he could not knock down the walls, a city that he was disturbed over it, and he went out by himself to figure out a strategy to defeat Jericho. And there you remember he met the Lord. He met the man with his sword drawn, and when he said, "Did you come for our side, or are you on the other side?" And he said, "No, I didn't come to take sides. I came to take over Joshua." And so Joshua recognized he was in the presence of God and dropped to his knees, took off his sandals, because he knew, as the Lord had said, you're standing on holy ground. And so we've talked this week about the strength, the 5 words that Joshua learned here. First of all, strength. His strength did not come from him or his army or his strategies. It came from the Lord. Secondly, what's the strategy? How are we going to do this? What am I going to tell the army? How are we going to plan to attack Jericho? And then he heard from the Lord, and God gave him the plan, the strategy. And he learned that not only is his strength in the Lord, but his strategy is also in the Lord. And then yesterday we talked about the word submission. He learned what submission is. He bowed in worship in the presence of God. He believed the word that God gave him, even though it didn't seem practical. He believed the word that God gave him. And so he, believing the word and bowing in worship, he acted in obedience. He did what God said to do. That's called submission. And obedience doesn't demand understanding. It just demands doing it. It demands action. Now today I want to talk about a 5th word that Joshua learned something about here, and it's the word self-sufficiency, self-adequacy. And Joshua felt the whole weight of Israel on his shoulders, the same weight that Moses faced. And he thought, how am I going to do this? And the first thing the Lord told him was, Joshua, you're not going to do it. I'm going to do it. All I want you to do is obedience and worship. And if you'll worship me and obey me, I will be your sufficiency. You see, that's the same thing that David learned when he came to his brothers, and he had just some smooth stones and a slingshot, but he also had the promise that God would be his adequacy. And whereas they had listened to the giant every morning yell at them and bluff them, David came with a few smooth stones and the guarantee that God was with him. And so he went out to meet his Goliath, just as Joshua went out to meet his Jericho. And he learned not to depend on his own thinking, not to depend on his own emotion, not to depend on his own preparation, not to depend on his own abilities, but to depend wholly and totally on God. Because if this didn't work, he was going to come off looking silly as a leader. He was going to come off looking foolish as a leader, and his armies would never follow him again. So he had to learn to renounce self-sufficiency. Now, the first 3, they were things he had to grab hold of. The strength of the Lord, the strategy of the Lord, submission to the Lord. But this 4th one, he had to give up. He had to let go of his self-sufficiency and depend totally on God. His dependency was on the Lord. Now, let me tell you something. There's a difference between self-assurance and self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is dependent upon self. Now, you can be self-assured in the wrong thing. You can be self-assured that you're adequate and you can do it in your strength. That's a bad mistake. But there's another kind of self-assurance where you are assured what God has done, what God has said he will do, what God has promised he will accomplish, what God has given you, he will perform through you. So Joshua learned not to depend on himself. He learned that the word self-sufficiency should not even be in the vocabulary of a follower of God, because we are never adequate in and of ourselves. We are always adequate when we depend on him. Our sufficiency is in the Lord. Let that be your watchword today. And whatever Jericho you face, whatever Goliath you face today, remember you're not adequate, but God is. And what he's called you to do, he will perform through you, through his strength, through his strategy, through your submission, and through your renunciation of your own self-sufficiency and your total dependence upon the Lord Jesus Christ to be who he is and to do what he does through you. Remember what he said when he walked on the earth. I only do what I see the Father doing, and everything that I do, it is the Father doing through me. Now, while he walked in flesh, totally dependent on God, you can do the same thing, walking in your flesh, but totally depending on the Spirit who lives in you and the presence and power of Jesus Christ who works through you. God bless you. Have a blessed Thursday today, and we'll see you for last talk about Joshua and his Jericho tomorrow when we come back together. God bless you. Have a great day today.